everybody. Welcome to Travel on the Pod TV Network. And I'm your host, Nick Palavita. And today we're going to be looking at a pretty exciting topic, which doesn't get much love and attention. And this is the House of Mary at Ephesus. And so we're going to go through a little bit of a story here, because the House of Mary is actually the House of Mary, who was the mother of God, who lived and died at Ephesus, which, for people who don't know where that is, it's in Turkey. So you have to actually fly. I'll show you how you get there. As a matter of fact, I didn't know much about this until we started doing this particular show. But first of all, it is in Turkey. In order to get to Ephesus, you actually have to fly into Izmir. Now, why do you fly into Izmir, which used to be known as Smyrna? It's because Ephesus is all ruins. It's gone. And when I say it's ruins and gone, here's the problem with Ephesus. Well, Ephesus does have many other ruins. The problem is that the river silted in and there's no more city. And what people don't understand about Ephesus is that, then this is in Turkey, it was one of the largest cities in the world, in the old world. As a matter of fact, the population was estimated to be 250,000. And now all it is ruins. What happened? It used to be a port city. The city got silted in. It was no longer a port city. And so basically, it's just a bunch of ruins. But there's something very important in these ruins, and that's the House of Mary. What happened is that and we're going to go through the story about this, how this all took place, because it's really fascinating. Basically, John took Mary to Ephesus because in Jerusalem they weren't doing too good, and Ephesus was a big city. Paul was there, and he wrote his letters to the Ephesians, and we're going to go over that also. Part of the reason he wrote letters, he got kicked out of Ephesus because he kept promoting Christianity, and they liked Artemis, and they had this old temple of Artemis at Ephesus, which is one reason I was interested in going. It was one of the ancient wonders of the world, one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, now reduced to one column. There's nothing there anymore. And Artemis was actually Diana, which was a pagan god. And the merchants were making tons of money by selling statues around the world. And so when Paul came in and said, no, he's just a pagan god, you got to believe in Jesus Christ, they don't like that because they started losing sales. So let's get you on your trip to Ephesus. First of all, you have to fly into Izmir. There are nonstop flights from Barcelona to Izmir. It used to be known as Smyrna. It's a big, beautiful city, that fourth largest city in Turkey. A lot of people don't even know about it. Now, I stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which was really great. It's right, you have a beautiful view looking over the bay, and it's just a modern, wonderful town that doesn't get a lot of love. But if you stay there, it's certainly worth staying. And then now, how do you get to Ephesus? Because it's not like it's next door. It's 70 kilometers away. It's pretty far away. What we did is we went to sign up with Get Your Guide. And I've used Get Your Guide many times, and they're really good, because the problem with going to these places is you have to get there. And they'll pick you up at your hotel and take you there. But also they'll show you around. And we're going to show in other videos on Pod TV places where they hopefully be able to show you some videos of our guide who showed us around Ephesus. But the first thing he did is they took us to the House of Mary. Okay, and the thing is, the House of Mary has a pretty interesting and compelling story, because the House of Mary at Ephesus is kind of on the outskirts of Ephesus. In other words, it's not like right in the city center. It's way up on a hill. So that was the first part that we went to. The reason I wanted to go was, of course, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, which I knew since I was a kid. It was a big deal because it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and still is. But like I said, it's now reduced to one column. It's not very impressive to see. We did see it on our way out, but I'm telling you, it's not much. Now, what happened to Ephesus? Like I said, population, 250,000. The biggest cities in the world. Now, Rome had about 1 million, so it wasn't the biggest city, but it was pretty spectacular during its time. And we're going to look at some of the film of the ruins of Ephesus. It was pretty spectacular. And then, of course, here's the problem. This happened to a lot of cities. The river silted in and they lost all their trading routes. There was no way to get in and out. And unfortunately, Ephesus declined and continued to decline to where it is now, just a bunch of ruins. Okay, so let's go talk about St. John. St. John went to Ephesus with Mary. Again, part of the reason was they weren't too popular in Jerusalem. And the thing is, Ephesus was a big, inviting city. So he decided he was going to go there. Now, some people say, well, why did Mary go with John? I mean, seriously? Well, it's factual that John was over in Ephesus. Mary was entrusted to St. John. This is how the argument goes. And we're going to look at the quotes in the Bible that Jesus said, okay, this is your son and this is your mother. And ever since then, we have this particular arrangement where Mary was entrusted to St. John. Now, here's where the story gets even more interesting. Okay, and this is the house of Mary. This is where Mary lived until she passed away or she ascended into heaven, whichever you want to believe. But here's a story that I didn't know until I got to Ephesus. This is Catherine Emmerich. Never even heard of her. She was born in 1774, died in 1824. She had a vision of the house, and it was on this hill, and she described the house and the hill, etc. And she was kind of a reclusive nun. So Catherine was in Germany, never even went there, but had this vision, and I never even heard this story till I went to Ephesus, had a vision of where the house was. Well, this was like in 1824 and 1700, she kept saying, there's the house of Mary. I have a vision of this. So finally what happened is they sent a group to see if what she's saying is true. So the Catholic Church says, okay, let's go send some people out to see if it's true. And then they found this house, and they found it in 1891, which we're going to look at some of the pictures of the house today. The house is very nondescript. I mean, if you said, I'm going to go see a house, it's exciting. No, it isn't. Okay, the other thing is the house was built in the 5th century, 6th century. So wait a minute, it's not even the right date. In other words, we got the wrong date. It has to be built in like the 1st century. Typical what happens if you're over here in Europe, they built the house on another house. And they found this other house underneath this house that was built in the 1st century. So here they have what they believe is the house of Mary. So the house is dated to the 6th century. Okay, so when you go look at the house, you're going to say, and by the way, it's pretty big for that time. It's pretty, I would say it's about a 1,500 square foot house. And I'm going like, wow, she was living pretty good. But that wasn't really her house. That was the house built on top of the house. And then you go, why is she living way out in the country? She's living way out in some mountainside rather than inside the city. Remember, there's 250,000 people inside the city. Don't know the answer to that question. But here I found very interesting. The house underneath was linked to the 1st century. Now that would put it in the time which Mary would have been there. So that would actually make sense. Okay, so now we found this house of Mary and it's underneath. And this is very interesting. You can visit the house, which is what I did. But there's something very interesting here too. No pictures inside, just the outside. We're going to show you some of the outside pictures because I can't show you the inside pictures because they won't let us take pictures inside. And I will tell you, it's not that very interesting on the outside. And sadly enough, it's not that very interesting on the inside. What's interesting is that it has historical significance. It's nondescript, not much but walls. In other words, you're looking at old walls, literally, when you're looking at the house of Mary. Okay, so that's pretty cool. However, do you get people go there? Yes, both Christians and Muslims go to the house. Why did Muslims go? Because Muslims believed that Christ was a prophet. And the thing is, of course, they believe Mary was also, had spiritual relationships with Christ. So they do get a lot of Christians to go, and they also get Muslims to go. And, so like I said, it provides a lot of historical significance. Now, in addition, of course, we have Paul that we're going to discuss. Paul, the apostle, was kicked out of Ephesus. He also went there, and it's well documented he spent time there, but he got kicked out. And even John left for a couple of years and came back, and that so they left, come back. We're not sure why. And then him and Mary both died in Ephesus. We'll take a look at that also later on. Okay, but his reason for getting kicked out was quite simple. He denounced Artemis, which is Diane, which was a goddess. And they had the temple of Artemis, this huge temple of this lady in Ephesus, a wonder of the world. Um, and he was denouncing him, and he's denouncing him, saying that, look, this is a pagan god. You need to work, Christ is the true God. And the merchants were making money selling Artemis statues literally all over the Roman world. And so they didn't like him, and they decided to kick him out. And that's one reason when you look through the Gospels, you're going to see Paul's letters to the Ephesians. The reason he wrote letters to the Ephesians, he wasn't living in Ephesus because he got kicked out. So I remember reading when I was a kid these epistles, Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Not sure why, but now, as someone's commentator said, that's the rest of the story. He got kicked out. So we do know that John and Mary left. Paul left also, but they did come back, and then they passed. Mary passed away, and the thing is, we have Mary dying actually in Ephesus. Ephesus itself also has many other ruins that we can look at, but the key thing we're going to do today is obviously look at the house of Mary. Okay, now there's a couple other interesting factoids that are out there you may be interested in. Number one, John wrote the Gospels when he was in Ephesus. So, and they do have some documentation about that. And here's something also interesting. There's two tombs with John on it, John the Apostle and John the Presbyter. And when it comes to the book of Revelations, people argue, well, they know who's buried in two tombs, but which John wrote Revelation? So scholars are still arguing about that today, but there are two John's tombs that are buried there. Now, Mary was entrusted to John, and this actually shows up in the scriptures, John 19:25-27, which he wrote when he was in Ephesus. So it gives even more credence that Mary went with them to Ephesus. And then, of course, the Council of Ephesus in 431, where the Catholic Church said Mary was of a divine nature. So, like I said, when you look at Ephesus, there is a lot of history behind it, and especially the story of Mary. But what we don't see is a lot of photos. So we're going to look at some photos of this. Let's see if we can get this on here in a bigger light, which we can't, but let's try this one. Maybe this will work. No? Okay. All right. So we're going to look at some of the photos that we can look at. First of all, we're going to try to look at some streets in Ephesus. Let me see if I can get you a street here. Okay. I'm going to see if I can blunt my I'm on that. Later on, we're going to do a show on Ephesus itself. But right now, I just wanted to focus on the House of Mary because the House of Mary at Ephesus, I think, is quite spectacular. It's worth going to see, but the thing is, you're probably not going to want to spend a lot of time there. And for those who do make their trek down there, it's certainly a worthy thing to do. And what we're going to do is bolt out of here. We hope you enjoyed our video for today. And like I said, today it was concentrating on the House of Mary at Ephesus. And we'll see you next time on the Pod TV network, basically the Travel Channel. Bye bye. Assuming I can go, goodbye.